Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, moshing to the apocalypse. We're all still alive, barely. And we got Don Webb, How to Become a Modern Magus, a manual for magicians of all schools. We got Wham here with us tonight.
Hey.
Don's been here many times. He's even co-hosted with me before. It's always a pleasure to have Don here. And this week basically has been the site got destroyed through updates again with another guy. But he's moving it to better servers and fixing it at Church of Magus Radio. But we're starting over from scratch, and it's been insane. It's like this Mabus word must be cursed the way the site thing's going. And but anyway, it's starting all over from scratch. Then throwing a kidney stone, then throwing a missing pig that I finally found today with Christina, and here we are sliding in. And we got Don Webb. It's great to have you here, Don. How's it going?
It's good. I always enjoy being on your show. You're smart and you're funny, so that's the two things that are needed.
Smart and funny.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And basically a good guy.
Basically a good guy.
Thank you. Capricorn, sometimes we got a little thing going, a little dark thing. But
You're still a good guy.
Well, on Roku tonight. Hey, gentlemen and ladies. Church of Mabus, baby. But so Don, tell us about this book, How to Become a Modern Magus, a manual for magicians of all schools. What was your opener for it to get our audience hooked?
There are a lot of books that teach one or another philosophies of magic. Some of them are connected with institutions. Some are just what some guy or gal thinks. And I had thought for years, if there's commonality, if there's something that like everyone needs that gets into the magical field. And then I had the big question, can I teach them the techniques, but not the philosophy that comes with the techniques? In other words, it's like a scientific approach, like do this exercise. When you get a result, skip on over and read these questions. And so I wanted to write a book that would be customizable to everyone. First off, it's going to be based on their experience. Secondly, having taught magic for decades, I've noticed the thing both in my students and in myself when I've learned magic and other people that practice. When you start to take up a practice, life can get in the way. You've decided, I'm going to spend a year learning about the runes. I'm really focused on this, and here's my agenda. And then you lose a job, or you get a job. You fall in love, you fall out of love. You're sick, someone in your family dies. So I also put in this book something that doesn't exist elsewhere. It's what I call the Book of Gates. So that as people go through their year, anything that comes up, they can say, hey, I'm going to switch over to this really important life thing for a while and return. So literally everybody that passes through the book on that level gets a different experience. And then finally, I offer a lot of resources. I offer all the areas I think magicians should know about, from philosophy, lives of magicians, science, history, even a little bit of linguistics. And I said, hey, here's a bunch of books. You need to pick some of your own to read during the year. And throughout the questions. A lot of times my monthly question will be, what did you learn this week, this month, from a book other than mine? So I think I've put together a training manual that literally everybody that goes through it can have a legitimate but completely personal experience. So far I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from people that have started the book.
And I see it's divided in chapters according to certain gods or goddesses. Let's say, for example, the Anubis chapter. Tell us why you have it divided like that, and plus let's hear some Anubis stuff, because that's definitely cool and not something that just pops up all the time on the show for sure.
Well, first off, I like Anubis. I've got a good relationship with him, but let's be a little bit more serious. Anubis is the great god of initiation. He leads you through life passages, particularly ones that are dark and scary. Now, Anubis in Egyptian times did two things. Number one, he opened the battlefield for the Pharaoh. He would say, hey, Pharaoh, I'm going to make sure your troops hit the right places at the right time. It's a really good skill to have going on. But he also, and it seems like a different skill at first, opens the way for you when you die. He's the one that takes you to the hall of judgment and judges you. He's that final person you can't hide anything from. Now, in part of the book, I talk about Egyptian soulcraft. Soulcraft is looking at the different parts that make us up. In English, in the Judeo-Christian world, we don't have a lot of soulcraft. We've got a body, got a soul. Some people think we have a spirit, not quite sure what that is. Mind and heart figure into it somehow. Really primitive soulcraft. The Egyptians spent a lot of time thinking about the parts of us. And one of the reasons that that's interesting is we all find every day different parts of us want to do different things. We're not like a single unified entity. I'm working on my article. I'm thinking about going out and having a beer with my friend. Still upset about that YouTube I saw, 2 months ago. All that boiling around, lack of unity. Egyptian says you have a lack of unity because you're not a unity, because you have parts. And the Egyptian said there are 8 parts of the soul. And so each of the Egyptian chapters, I look at 2 of the parts that are tied together. I say, here's what this part feels like. Here's what you can use it for in magic. Try this, see what happens. Now, Anubis is tied to 2 parts of soul. One is called the shoot. The shoot is your physical shadow, really what you see behind you. But just as Jung made the shadow the holder of all the things we can't think about, the Egyptians did as well. Completely same metaphor. So Anubis is in charge of temptation in our lives. Temptations, if they're pulling us to the right experiences, are great. You should actually try to have good temptations. The other part of the soul he's connected with is the Sekhem, the power. Everybody everybody listening to us tonight, everybody that listens to this at some future time, you have a Sekhem, you have a power. You have one thing or 2 things you're really good at. Maybe you made that into your life work. Maybe it's just that thing you can always do. You may have met that person that can't be beat at card games or has infallible green thumb. This part of the soul, the Egyptian soul, has grace, like some God gave that to us for some reason. So we need to find what our power is, we develop it, and then I say, let's link those 2 things together under the banner of Anubis. Our temptations and our power, tie them together and give them to the god of initiation. So that's pretty much the Anubis month.
And I'm seeing the 3 lovely and challenging faces of time. Verdandi, Urge, Scold. I know I have trouble pronouncing names, but are those all Norse?
Those are Norse. Now,
okay.
The reason I stopped, the last thing I did was time sense. And I chose time sense because as speakers of English, we speak a Germanic language, our brain is wired in Germanic language, we picked up the Germanic time sense, and that's different than anyone else in other language groups. Most languages are based on the idea of the past, the present, and the future. In German, based on the past, the present, and what should be. They see the future as not being fixed, but that it should have some fan, as Barbara Wilson say, a fan-shaped destiny. There should be certain things that tend to happen. The last thing I have a magician work with during the year is time concepts. Time concepts, you need to be pretty good at your magic. You need to have some sense of sensitivity. So I put that in months, 10, 11, and 12. And I put each of the Norns in charge of one, beginning with Verdandi, Norn of the present, because the present is extremely powerful. We can make all these changes in the present, but the present's also extremely powerless. We are at a certain place. We've brought ourselves to a certain place. Our scope of action is small. Then I moved on to Urda. Now, Urda is a word that we all have in English, right? We still say it in English, weird. Although now we don't use that entirely for a time concept. Although we still have that thing, if something happens that's out the ordinary, wow, man, that's weird. That's dealing with the past. Here's the good news. Past is vast. You have all kinds of things in your past, and even more past in the history of the planet. That gives you a lot of things to pick from if you're figuring out what you want to resonate with, or it gives you a lot of things to be wary of. So wait a minute, I know I have this pattern that keeps reasserting itself. How do I get away from that? And then lastly, I end the year with Skuld, which is that which should be. Hopefully by the end of the year, the magician, he or she has developed some really useful really useful powers, awarenesses, lines of thought. And so I say the last thing we should look at is what's going on in the rest of your life. So that's why I do at the very end, I do time. Contrary-wise, at the beginning, I begin with the idea of initiation, boundaries, and space. So we start with space, and we end with time.
Who is Agni? Agni.
Agni is a Sanskrit god of fire.
Okay.
Now, fire was extremely important to the ancient Hindus. You always began literally every single ceremony with fire. Fire was also a huge deal to the Indo-Iranians, the people who came, the Zoroastrians. Some people even call them fire worshippers, because fire is that great symbol of the mind. Fire, for most magicians, is the twofold process of desire. Man, I really want something. Oh, that'll get you up, get you out of your house, get you doing things. Desire is good. Or fire is bad if you give yourself too much to desire. If you're like, no, I'm just going to do what I feel like doing or want to do or have become addicted in. So start with fire as a second month to begin for magicians to think, what are my motivations? What motivates me? What motivates me too much? Because that should happen early on if you look at what you want to be working with, what are your goal, your desires, so later you can come up with your goals.
And what do you mean by dangers of occultism? I know that's a little section in there. The dangers of occultism.
Dangers of occultism is sometimes some things that I've seen people have problems with over the years. And I've literally seen hundreds of people start the magical life. Now, it's not the dangers that your Christian pastor would say. It's not like a demon that grabs you or comes and haunts your rag doll. But there are things that people run into that are real problems. And I talked about a few of them. I'll mention a couple. Poverty is one. Some people, particularly that take up ceremonial magic, spend way too much of their income on stuff for the chamber. They actually sink a lot of money into things that aren't bringing, food on the table or help them a career or anything. It's an easy thing to do because we think, man, if I just buy this ingredient, if I can find this incense, that's all I need. And that also means you're always looking outside yourself at the material you're working on. As opposed to the most important thing you need to be looking at yourself. Another danger of occultism. We've all encountered that. People become fanatic about whatever they just read about. Man, this is it. Man, I read this book on animal spirits. And we all need to do that. And that's all I'm going to talk about for a couple of months. And then a year later, like, I don't do that anymore. It's always those things that grab our attention. What really needs to grab the attention of the magician always is working on the self, because that's what you're stuck with. It's your greatest gift or your greatest curse or whatever. but that's where you're going to be. Um, Another common danger of occultism is people who want to join anything you're doing. And I call this Aunt Ednaism. Now, the reason I call it Aunt Ednaism is because of Aunt Edna, not an aunt of mine. I had an encounter with Aunt Edna. I was in the beautiful city of Denver. Love Denver, love its restaurants, love the art museum there. Man, that place rocks. I loved it. I was in a magic shop, an occult shop, and I was watching this young couple. They were in their 20s, and they were trying to decide which book they wanted to buy. And they literally had two books. One was by Stephen Flowers, one was by John Keel. First off,
That's a combo.
right? First off, because I'm egotistic, I'm just vain as hell. I was trying to find some way I could walk over and say, I know both those guys. There's no way you could actually do that and make the conversation not creepy. But I listened to them. They finally decided to buy both books. And then as they were leaving the restaurant, the woman grabs the man's arm and says, "Don't mention this to Aunt Edna." Well, in my mind at that moment, I'm assuming Aunt Edna is super religious and could be worried that they're going to hell about this and going to be very strongly a preacher of some sort. Well, as fate would have it, we both went to the same Chinese restaurant. It's a great restaurant. It had Wushu duck. Never had that before. Big winner. I'm eating with a friend, and I noticed the young couple come in. And I hear them, because they're just close enough to hear, saying, "Remember, don't talk about things to Aunt Edna." And then Aunt Edna enters. Aunt Edna, as I can see, at least 10 yards away, is wearing every piece of amulets, occult jewelry, magical trinkets. I'm sure if you threw this woman in a bog, she would sink immediately.
So she's basically a junkie.
She's a junkie. And she comes down and she says, she starts talking about her experience. First, it's in the Rosicrucian Order. It says, "I just joined the 9th level. That's the Illuminati, dear." And just goes on. And she has things to say about UFOs and about ceremonial magic and about Wicca and I thought, wow, you have never focused on anything more than about 15 minutes, but you're just excited it all exists. Okay, it's a form of entertainment, but that's not really a form of self-change. And all of us, myself included, have some Aunt Edna in us. There's a certain part of us that just does this just for the fun of it. And that's okay, because it keeps us doing it.
I think that's called spiritual materialism, but it's fun.
Oh yeah, spiritual materialism. There's a nice book. I cannot. The title is "How to Cut Through Spiritual Materialism"
by Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
That's a wonderful book. It's in my resource.
It's a great book. It's a great book.
What's that book called again?
It's called "Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism."
Okay. I'm just putting that on my little to-do.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore Buddhism, but it's really good.
Well, he does lay out that problem of we're not more spiritual because of what we buy.
Right.
And buying stuff does not equate to knowing stuff. Now, like many humans, as you can probably see from the overflow of my library behind me,
well,
I buy a lot of books. See, I was noticing that you and I are that same tribe.
And that is less than a tenth. I mean, I'm surrounded on all three sides here. So, yeah.
I have it here too. People been sending me books for 16 years for free in the mail, and some of them I need to get rid of and go through, but there's a lot of great ones, but they like send you weird part 3 to some space book you never heard of or something. Like they don't ask you, like they just send you. Now it's like become a problem. But there's some great ones in here that I just need to straighten them up. But so I know I've seen weird stuff in the past, like at Whitley Strieber's site and stuff about trying to tie occultism to UFO activity. And all your experience or stories that you've heard from people, has anyone done anything that's brought on anything paranormal or anything, weird like that?
Brought on is an interesting question. I don't know if I can draw that line, but I am aware that almost everyone I know that's a serious magician has seen, and usually doesn't have theories about it, but has seen things in the sky. That's part of becoming more important, or or less trapped, I think, on this planet. Now, most of us don't talk about. I don't talk about a couple of UFO sightings, because then I know that's going to be like the one thing I talk about at every interview the rest of my life. I think first of all, I also really like Whitley, my fellow Texan. He's kind of a great guy. He is doing what would be normally a magical initiation. To me, it looks like he is being initiated into ancient Germanic religion, because so far he has made contacts with the dwarves, little guys,
Yes.
and the elves, which are among the first few worlds you visit after you leave Midgard. I mean, he could tell his entire saga to some, Norseman of the 12th century, and the guy said, I happened to my brother Olaf. Can't totally trust those guys. Can't totally, neglect them.
Yeah.
I think that the paranormal, when I was a young writer, I was exchanging letters with the great John Keel, and he made the remark, I think I quote it in the book, if you play with the weird will play with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much true. And you can't have occultism entirely on your terms. It can't be like, well, I'm going to do my magical work on Wednesday nights and Sunday afternoons, and nothing else is going to enter my life. No, if you want to open yourself to the unusual, you're going to open yourself to the unusual. And this leads to another problem. It's in the book. The problem I've seen for years. Just because something happens, it's not a good result.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the thing about doing the work is that eventually the work will do you. I mean, that's, in fact, when you were saying at the very beginning that, part of the way you wrote this book is that, a lot of times people make commitments to do something and then something really big happens. And what I've learned is that oftentimes that really big thing that happens is actually a part of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, real initiation is not this stuff we contrive for ourselves in the chamber.
Right.
What we do in the chamber is getting us a set of, my old teacher, Dr. Kuno, said, getting training wheels so we can deal with whatever the real phenomena is. Because the real phenomena is bigger, scarier, more ecstatic, more everything, and most importantly, harder to understand.
Right. Yeah. It's intended, whatever intention means, it's intended to sort of blow your boundaries out. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, we're very tightly wired as human beings, as people living in a capitalist society, as politically, we're very wired to a world, and the human, our little tribal brain is always seeking confirmation. So I always want to seek things that confirm what I think, which means I'm going to not pay attention to other things.
What is that?
I don't know. I have no clue.
That sounds like a motorcycle took off somewhere.
That was not from
That was
you.
not here. Because I'm in a
Was that from you, Don?
No, I hear it, but no, it's not from my room.
I have no clue what it was. We had that happen last week with Rob and Trish McGregor. They were supposed to interview Whitley that Monday. But anyway, a weird drum beating happened during the show, and everybody's like, that's not from me. That's not, I don't know what the heck that was. I don't know what the heck that just was. But anywho, just weird. Sometimes I wonder if these shows bleed through or something, from doing them all at once or whatever. But I know I want to read the Them book. I definitely want to check that out. And I once had an experience with these small cloak beings in the woods standing around a black box, and a black cat jumped towards them and they vanished. And me and a friend, we had been partying, and I got to go into intel what that all meant, but it was in my early 20s. And we both saw it. and a cat jumped and they vanished. I've wondered if those are like the dwarfs or something. And sometimes I know there's a lot of controversy with Stephen Greer, but I know he has like those little weird little mini aliens that, and I'm like, was that what was in those cloaks? like I don't know, but it was weird, and I'll never forget it. But I always wonder what the little black box was. Like, this weird stuff. But at the time, I know I've been reading a lot of Celtic Otherworld stuff, DJ Conway and weird stuff like Lord of Light and Shadow, some book or something. So I felt like I brought some of that stuff. Like when you start reading that stuff, it's like to me, I've had it happen like you draw it, kind of like a moth to a light or something like that. But definitely fascinating. So would you consider yourself a wizard? Is that what a magus is? A wizard?
It depends on who I'm talking to. I probably wouldn't use that phrase if I was speaking to a lone
wizard. I'm Don Webb, the wizard.
But wizard is, it's fun.
I like the word.
I like the the pseudo etymology that Tolkien gives from Ishtar, right? The Ishtari come. One of his made-up languages, Sindarin, one of his made-up languages. But there are a lot of people that are in some way living the magical life. That's a common structure in our brains. Every human has it. You can take your most materialist human, just like, I don't believe any of that gunk, I don't think of anything. And they also believe that sitting in a restaurant, they can make a waitress come and take their order. Like that's just like a thing in their brain. Like, oh, nope, magic is the thing we do. It's a structure of the brain. It's a very primal structure. Most people aren't very good at it, and that probably saves their butt more than it hurts them.
Yeah. It's true.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Wham, from the book or anything?
Well, no, let me look. I mean, I will admit that I had to do a quick read of the book. It's got a lot in it.
It's thick.
So, it's just like I read things in it and I thought, I'm going to have to come back and read this, that kind of thing, because I'm always reading like 7 books.
Sure.
I'm sure you understand, Don, about that. I think what I did like about it was, and I think what I did like about it is that one of the things it does, and you can reflect on that, you've talked about this a little bit, but it uses certain deity forms and certain ritual processes that are actually kind of, I don't want to use the word, I'm not going to use that word that I was going to use, that are accessible. I'll put it that way. In other words, they're not too culturally specific, like if you were going to, because you've said in other places, like, it was your book about the vampire magic, which, by the way, last year I went through that whole book. I did the whole 9 months. I had some interesting results. It was an interest, I did it pretty much as I could, exactly how written out, as much as I could. I know I've done magic enough, I've worked in the occult enough to know that, there are some things that just given time and space and money, you have to sort of move around a little bit. But one of the things you say in that book is that you talk about how Americans do bricolage, which is true. And what I liked about what you were doing here is that you obviously know enough about each of these deity forms and the traditions or the cultures that they come from, that you can present these deities in a way that is both true to the tradition they come from, but yet not absolutely wedded to it, if you know what I mean. Because I could see that some purists would say, oh, there's some cultural appropriation going on here. It's like, oh, come on. This is magic. We're Americans, okay? But you provide a general way of getting into these traditions with these deity forms in a way that's respectful, but also I think what's most important, it helping the person or the practitioner, the prospective practitioner, to connect in their way to the deity form, which I think is really important, especially if you're going to do sort of modern occultism. And the other thing I like about it is that, like most of the books that I've read about magic, and there are some good ones, like there's that one that Donald Craig did years ago that's based on the OTO stuff, or, some Crowley stuff. And I actually think that that's a pretty good book.
Yeah,
if that's what you're into, because it's very hands-on, it simplifies everything. If you're going to do the Enochian system, I always say read Milo Duquette's book on Enochian magic. It's probably the best, most accessible book on that tradition I've ever read. I finally understood it, for one thing, because he's a good writer. But what I like about this book is that, as you say, you can sort of come out of a number of different approaches and find something in this book. Which
I try to pick up techniques that are not hard to use and have a lot of bang. And so, like a lot of the practical magic, which is here's a little ritual you can do to make people nicer to you where you work. Pretty much that's something that people have as a real need for. They'll have enough desire to make the ritual work. But then that also sets up everything afterward. I can say, well, how do you feel about that ethically?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The first two things for modern male magicians is usually get paid and get laid. It's money magic and it's sex magic. But the thing that comes afterwards, you then immediately have to enter into the ethical world. Well, is it right I'm doing this? To what extent can I mess with someone else's will? And then there's also the fear world. Wait a minute, who's messing with my will?
Right, exactly.
Although it's very seldom a magician usually who's messing with your will. It's really, really good psychologists that work advertising firms.
I was going to say advertising, politicians, something like, not even politicians so much, but yeah, advertising. I mean, I think that what's important about looking at magic, and like when I did the vampire thing, the works over the last year, is that what was good about going through all of those exercises, and sort of like, because of my background, I had to, despite everything I've done, I had to really push myself with some of those things, just simply because at some point, and this is what, to me, what the point of magic is, at some point you push up against some of that really deeply ingrained stuff, whether it's ethical stuff or, just ideas about reality or ideas about yourself or, whatever. And what I like, what you also have in this are those self-reflective questions, because it's not like you're trying to make everybody into the same kind of Magus. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to be their own Magus. Everybody's going to it's going to reach their own conclusions with this stuff, if they really do it. I mean, because my whole, getting liked by people at work, my whole question would be, well, do I really care about whether people like me at work or not? Or do I only care if certain people like me at work? You know what I mean? I mean, it's not like it's a Christian either or kind of thing, or a certain kind of psychoanalytic all or nothing kind of thing. So those are good questions.
Well, the magician always, in the course of his or her career, does a lot of self-analysis.
Right.
And very seldom, I like to kind of build that in, as opposed to, well, wait till you do some things that, scare you or something, then figure it out. So I try to do with steps that are accessible. Now, there's a phenomenon in magic, and I'm sure that you know this because you're a practitioner of yours: novelty versus practice.
Yes.
First time you try something, It works. It's
It
great.
works.
Man, I did this thing. I did,
Yep.
you know, my wife teaches people how to do dreaming exercises. And always the first night, you know, half the audience comes back the next day and I had a lucid dream or I astral project, whatever, is hugely excited because just suggesting the possibility. But human beings being what they are, we also really quickly lose sight of wonder. And we lose sight of the thing that was totally amazing to us 3 months ago. So with the book, I tapped into that by giving people, okay, here's something new every month. But then the questions refer back to the whole of the time of practice. And even, of course, stuff long before you bought the book.
Right.
Just,
Right. And also,
oh,
and also the whole process of magic too is that sometimes what ends up happening, I mean, this has happened to me and I know it's happened to other people. I've watched it happen, is that maybe you get some really good instant results and then you get really attached to those results. You know, you get really attached and you forget that it's not a slot machine. I mean, it's not it's not a vending machine. It is a slot machine. It's not. It's not a vending machine. And that sometimes takes people a while to learn what that really means. You know, it's partly wonder and partly discipline.
Yeah, which is an odd blend for modern humans. You
It
know,
is.
our ancient forebears could handle that blend a lot better.
I had Donald Michael Craig on once, and I remember him talking about the magic of the taint. I'd have to dig the show up to remember the rest, but I remember that.
He was a very interesting man.
Yeah, he was funny. I know he passed away. And what is the Book of Gates? That sounds interesting. That sounds like
one of the sections for the
Book of Gates. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I thank Donald Tyson for a great title there. The Book of Gates was that realization that I put in the book. I said, as you do your practice, first thing, read the book. Don't try to practice it month by month. So, you know, some of the things involve like, hey, you have to buy a tool this month. Probably you don't want that just the night you're about to do it. The Book of Gates talks about things that happen in our lives that if it occurs, you should do that rather than the particular practice that week. What should you do if a loved one dies? What should you do if somebody you know but don't really care about dies, which is a very different, magical moment. With the Book of Gates, I tried to set up so that I chose like 14 things. I did things that basically I had experienced myself, or I had friends say, hey, when I was trying to do this initiatory path, doing the Abramelin magic, or I'm doing the second year in the Rune Guild or whatever, this is what I ran up against. I said, okay, these things are going to happen. Let's use that. And then we come back to practice. And it's like Wham says, those things tend to be much more truer forms of initiation. These spectacular things, but they're much harder to digest at first.
Yeah. This is the Gates of the one part of your book that I actually read, because I've had so many. It's like I'm looking at all of these and I've pretty much had all of them. Sometimes in a month.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's not a, our lives are not ordered as we would order them.
Well, right, exactly. But I really appreciated, for example, the little ritual that you have about over breakups to set the barrier, because I've had to do stuff like that, and it's so weird because in our culture, I mean, this is when I've learned about all that stuff. In our culture, it's not that these things aren't hard and we shouldn't take them seriously when they hit you hard, or when they hit a person hard, But we tend to think of things like these as, especially like the loss of a relationship, the breakup of a romance, or the death of someone, as automatically tragic. Automatically tragic. And there might be something tragic about it, but especially if it has to do with something that somebody else has done, it's not so much what they have done, it's what you're going to do with it. Because what they've done is what they've done. And I think sometimes people, I know me, I have tended in my life to hold on to pain because I'm afraid that if I let go of the pain, all the rest of it will go too.
Sure.
So it's like if the pain is the only thing that's left, then I'll hang on to it. And but that's not true. There's so much there to learn with even a really difficult circumstance. And of course, I'm not saying seek out pain for pain's sake, because that's dumb too. I mean, certain types of pain maybe, but that kind of intense pain. I liked how you provided little sort of, deal with your stuff, and then here's a little ritual you can do. Here's a little thing you can do to kind of reset yourself back on the path. It's useful to do that. It's very useful.
That's one thing as modern humans we don't do well, because that's just not part of our culture.
Right, exactly.
We just don't have many rites of passage, and
It's true.
we tend to, think this thing's so sacred I shouldn't mess with it. No, it's because it is sacred. It's affecting you right now. How are you steering this? If you're going on icy roads, you have to turn into the skid if you want to control it, not out of the skid.
Exactly.
Of course, some of the things about the gates are not necessarily tragic. Like I have an example. What do you do with the psychic? Really useful for people that are taking up magic is they call up and say, "Hey, can I do a tarot reading for you guys, or can I do rooms or whatever?" And put yourself, in the chair, doing readings on command to people that are filled with emotion, and you're not going to see again, because you're going to learn a ton of psychology. You learn a ton about yourself. How honest should I be with this person? Because the tarot cards are saying, "Run away. This is a bad spouse." But their mouths are saying, "I am caught here." And sometimes it's easier to deal with that stuff ethically and philosophically when it's not you or your friend, just someone that speaks to you.
Right. Well, yeah, where you don't have as much skin in the game. Yeah. Yeah. But no, the gates were good.
I see this about creating the Inshallah rite, which I'm sure I didn't say that right, for creating a magical helper. What is that, like a golem or an astral being or something like that? Or something else?
It's what if an old school chaos magician would call it a servitor. That was
the nucleus.
The servitor, inshallah, is a really interesting entity, because I have people step through the creation. I say, before you start the book, here is a really simple exercise. See if you get results. Here, get to try it now. Don't do the entire book year worth of stuff. Try it. Try this. Inshallah helps you find things, and it helps you find the right people. Now, that's a perfectly good early magical activity, because you're not completely sure. Well, I did just find it. I don't know if the magic did anything, or I did find people, but maybe it's because I'm confident now. So you have all the questions the magician has, and then I had some other questions. I said, okay, you did that ritual. Was that your magic or my magic? So people can begin to start to think about those things. The nice thing about a servitor that puts you in touch with people is that's a really good thing just to have in your life. Meeting interesting people is one of the goals of life, period. A lot of people don't understand that.
It's definitely interesting. I know you mentioned shamanism. What are some of the aspects of that's intertwined with this?
Shamanism, has the first off, exists in every culture. It's like one of the things you get because you are human. It will be in your culture. Now, whereas I am a Setian and I say, hey, don't look for God in a pill. Don't take the substances. I will talk back about that in a minute if you want. There is this notion that there's more to the world than we see, and it's not benevolent or malevolent. It's not all good or all bad. It's mainly very different. And one of the best ways to get in touch with that is learning how to put yourself in trance states, either through meditation, through yoga, or through listening to a drumming tape. Find what works for you. The nice thing about shamanism also, if people become interested, that's one of those fields after the book, you can go and have a huge amount of stuff to read about, some of which is very good, some of which is just there.
What about the secret techniques of the Temple of Set? What does some of that entail? Sounds good.
A great line from my editor. No, the one of the things that the Temple of Set does is it has in its formulation, magic tends to be short and intense. So you go in, get your thing done, leave, which is a general setting approach to ritual magic. To have as little belief as possible about the overlying structure, but have perfect belief during the time of the rite.
Yes.
In other words,
Yes.
if I am invoking an angel, while I'm talking to that angel, that's an angel.
Mm-hmm.
When that is over, if you ask me, do angels objectively exist? I would say I have no idea.
Exactly.
Would like to find out.
Yes.
And being able to hit that switch keeps you from becoming obsessed with your results, but it also keeps you from saying, no, I'm not going to allow myself to plunge into that. You know, if anything, there's a Setian secret technique. It's you jump in the swimming pool and swim. You don't wade in.
Yeah.
And I know you said something about people that, practice and stuff have sky sightings and things like that. And I know a lot of my stuff started when I was reading a lot of, books like that. But it was also after I had testicular cancer at 17, and then my dad died a few years later. But after that, I started reading all this weird stuff. And next thing you know, I start having experiences. And one of those big experiences was I saw beings of light leave my house. As they had been in it and flew roof into the heavens, completely sober, not even nicotine that particular time. And I know you just said something about invoking angels, but it's just interesting. It's also interesting how trauma can, bring up these experiences and things like that. And I read a lot of stuff, but I don't go around saying I'm a shaman or a wizard. But I think I have some of those traits. But I'm a mess. But I don't go around trying to classify myself in any other way. But I know I've had a lot of weird sky stuff. Not like I used to, but for sure. Like, that's why we're here, because I saw all that weird stuff pretty much. That's why I made the show, seeing all that weirdness.
Well, there's definitely time, and when we're younger, our brains are a little softer. It happens more. Trauma gets rid of any inhibitions you have about saying, I'm going to pay attention to this. It's one thing to say, I'm not going to deal with magic because it's an irrational system. I'm not going to waste my time and money on it. In trauma, it's like, I need to get to something right now. Because I am dealing, as in your case, most plainly, with the mysteries of life and death. It's not something I'm going to think about later. I'm not going to take a college course in thanatology in a few years. A family member just died. I may have a huge disease. I got to know. That's a great way to awaken, but not a way we would want to schedule anyone to awaken.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the Book of Gates different than the thing I just found about Egyptian funerary rites? Is that any connection?
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, it's not similar to the that particular Book of the Dead. Although that Book of the Dead is set up with the idea that as you pass through the Duat, as you pass through the other world, there are things that you can't go any further until you know what to do. And in that sense, the Book of Gates is similar, but not in any sense of um, cracking out a 18th dynasty papyrus and looking at it.
It's definitely fascinating. I know there's some line from the Egyptian Book of the Dead about ye and over the horizon in your shining disk. I always found that one a good one. I used to quote it, but now my memory's too bad to remember it. But I always find that stuff fascinating and how you tie it in with the Temple of Set and everything. So this book, the Vampire book, was excellent, and this book is excellent as always. But is there anything you can talk about that's coming up next, or are you not at that stage yet?
I'm working on a book right now. Current working title is Magical Engineering for the 21st Century. But the book is strongly making me think about how human cognition works and when magic is a good way, both for your own cognition, other people's cognition, to mess with it. I think it's going to be a good book, but then I always think my book should be a good book. That's how I wind up writing 25 books. And then I think after that, I'm going to go back to fiction for a while, which was my first love.
What have you been reading lately? Is there anything that you've been reading that's pretty good?
A couple of things, actually.
I want to read them. I need to buy it at some point. The new Whitley Strieber.
This book
I
by
heard about that.
Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard of that dude. I have that comic book.
Big
Music book.
changes. Yeah, I like Paul a lot. I am also reading a couple of books on heuristics and self-delusion called You're Not as Smart as You Think and You Are Less Dumb Now, which I think are just delightful books, which show many of the traps our minds are caught in and why we built the traps in the first place. It's not really preachy. It's just like, this is where your brain's going to work. And I'm reading a book on esoteric Freemasonry called Letters About the Royal Art by J.B. Krebs, which is about letter magic from the 19th century. That's kind of not a book I'd recommend to your average listener because you need some background, but actually it may be a really important book. I may have some things to say about that later on.
Sounds interesting, actually.
Definitely, and I wrote those down. Well, we got just a few minutes. What have you been watching? Anything interesting, or are you Amish like Wham?
I'm Amish.
I
just don't have TV or cable.
She does some stuff.
Yeah, actually, usually the answer to that would be no. But I've been watching the Showtime series Yellow Jackets.
Okay, yeah, I've seen the first season.
Yeah, and
It's pretty
as long as they don't pull a Lost at the end and say we don't know what was going on, it has a high level of mystery, and the actresses are just amazing. I never knew that Christina Ricci was such a good actress because I just saw her as Wednesday Addams for years. Wow, she got talent off the wazoo.
Yeah, I saw that first season and it was good. Juliette Lewis, and there's so many people in it. And then I know the next season, which I haven't seen it yet, Elijah Wood. That's good. He's getting Frodo. Frodo's in it. But I'm going to check it out for sure. I've been doing The Mandalorian, a lot of people have been doing that, I'm sure. Jack Black was in the last episode as some ruler of some space city, which was kind of weird. Baby Yoda and Jack Black. It's a fun watch, but The Last of Us, that was really good. That was
that was a really good series. I did like that.
I beat the first game. It was hard as hell. But those zombies in it, terrifying in the game, just the concept. I heard they couldn't say zombies on set, but it was based on the whole insect weird thing. Some insect that zombifies you or something.
Zombie ants.
Yeah. I saw some weird thing. Christina showed me bugs growing like fungi that did something weird to them. Like they'll grow a mushroom on their back and it does something. So that gets really creepy when they start poking with that kind of stuff with these zombie things. I like it.
Yeah,
it was really good. What's your website? You got a website you want to give out?
Certainly I don't. I'm kind of a Facebook whore, so I hang out there a great deal.
Okay.
I'll probably get a new website developed. I've like you have had some problems with that in the past, and
Oh
I'm
man.
not interested.
Yeah, run from GoDaddy. That's all I'm gonna say. Hopefully, I don't get sued. But it's
And,
been great. It's been great. It's always a pleasure. Thanks so much, and we appreciate it.
all right, have a good
All
one.
right, take care, Don.
Take it easy.
All right, everybody. You're listening to churchofmabusradio.com. If you go to churchofmabusradio.com right now, there's one message which says help. Gregory Miller he used to be a Voice of the People, has been helping rebuild the site. He was on the network a long time ago. But the first dude went to the site and was just there to fix the newsletter. He's like, let me hit this update button. And then all hell broke loose. And then it was saying you got to do PHP or we can't support you with WordPress. So I did PHP. Boom. Blew up the site. It was like this poor guy went in just to, fix a newsletter. And then he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, I don't blame you. No matter who went in there, it would have went off like a bomb. But now Gregory Miller's in there, and he just had crazy stuff happen to where it was saying forbidden and you couldn't get to it. Something crazy happened, but now has servers that he says we could use and he owns, and it'll be a lot cheaper. And he started it all over, and he has all the code for the site. So now at least there's a little WordPress message at the thing instead of forbidden entry or whatever that. I don't even know. Something from GoDaddy. I don't know, but it's been insane. Like crazy. I was at the point to where I was just like, I'm just going to hook the URL to Joe's site, but screw this and delete it. But
well,
he says he can resurrect it.
Here's the deal. I mean, take it from someone who just a little, not quite a year ago, had to change providers, for my website, and had to hire some people to help me make the transfer. Of course, I have the money to do that, and you're lucky that you've got some people to help you or somebody to help you, but it takes about a week or two to make the transfer. And just to actually kind of go do the actual switch. You'd think it wouldn't take as long as it does, but that's about how long it takes. And so it blowing up and not being really available at the moment is kind of normal. So and like I told you in the comment that I gave you, whoever's working on it, if they need to check to see whether that process of transferring it is occurring, they can also check with the people that it's being transferred to, and like contact customer service. They'll know how to do it. So it just means it's offline for a little while.
Yeah, they're acting kind of weird with it. If you want to move it, they don't like that. So, but that's just the way it goes. It's moving. Adios, and hopefully, some semblance of it that was the old site will be resurrected at some point. It's in the process, but just have that pink moon, full moon, and we're still in that Pluto retro thing.
No, Pluto isn't retro at the moment, I don't think. It's moved into Aquarius. It'll go retro later on. It'll retro this summer. Hold on just a second. Let me check.
We were talking about something with Pluto last week. I mean,
it's gone into Aquarius.
Okay. Pluto.
Hold on just a minute. See, it will go. Okay, so Pluto right now is in Aquarius, and it will retrograde back into Capricorn beginning in June.
Capricorn representing.
And then it will remain in Capricorn until January 20th, 2024. And then it will go back into Aquarius.
Well, hopefully Pluto's friends with the Capricorn, dude.
Well, both Aquarius and Capricorn are ruled by Saturn.
Okay. Aquarius is?
Huh?
Aquarius is ruled by Saturn too?
Yes. Aquarius has two rulers. It has dual rulership. It has Saturn and Uranus. Both rule it.
Interesting.
But no, Pluto and Aquarius is actually kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. I mean, I've sort of been feeling it, so I'm kind of looking forward to it.
It's a good thing. I've been feeling something, and I don't know if it's always good. That's for sure. The kidney stone thing for weeks. Well, it's been going on and off for a while, but this has been the worst of it. It's just horrible. God. And then today, the pig escaped. That was an adventure of interviewing like 10 people trying to find this pig. Finally found her. And there's one house I went to. Christina made that Texas Chainsaw Massacre music noise, like that weird little noise effect. But that place was like a scary place. And the guy comes out finally. He's like, I'm going to put up my yellow dog because he'll kill her on sight. A yellow lab. Lucky he put it up. But we finally found her. But the worst part is just driving around the car in all these fields, and I'm sunburned and tired, and basically woke up just while we were sleeping just to let them out, and would have went back to bed, but that happened. So that was my day. And we finally found her. A preacher called and said that he saw her by some cars. We went over there, and she came out of the woods when she heard us talking to some dude. But the worst thing is the whole time just having visions of her being ate for Easter by country dudes.
Yeah, I know. Well, and not necessarily by humans even.
Yeah. Animals, coyotes.
Because she's not a huge person. So.
And there's a lot of coyotes here. Like it's crazy.
They would love her tender pork flesh.
Yep, and the whole time, of course, we're cooking a ham here. It's not her, but
obviously,
yeah, I can't give it up. I mean, when you have a pig, you think about it, but you're like, it's so good. Like, why do you make them taste so good? That's where the dilemma is. But don't make this taste so good. We're not supposed to eat it.
It's delicious.
Yeah, and bacon.
Yeah, well,
I feel bad.
Well, I can't eat pork. I don't digest it.
Okay.
So that's fine. You know.
Yeah, I would like to quit some of it, but maybe one year. Went to some horse farms and stuff, and talked to military dudes, preachers, and I should have made a little mini documentary about finding the pig. This is so weird. A lot of people laugh at you when you ask about it. I'm not joking. I'm just looking for this pig. Why is that? Hey, a little funny maybe, but one's they make jokes about eating her, and I would have shot her. Oh no, I wouldn't have. Gee, some guy was cracking jokes about eating her. Some country dude on a bike named Hank. It was definitely a trip for sure. Well, representing on Roku, churchandmabusradio.com. Let me see who is coming up. I forgot who my guest is next week. Let me see. I'm sunburned. Of course, it had to be hot today while you're out there. Oh, Beazle. You're here for the Beazle Man.
Am I here for the Beazle Man?
Yes, the Beazle. Beelzebub.
And when is Beelzebub?
Next Friday.
Yeah. We haven't talked to Beelzebub in a long time.
That's right. He's on.
Hey.
Been doing projects and stuff. He sent me a book. I forgot to put my name on it, and I went to this other house that's part of our family, but they had to open it, and it looks like the Zodiac Killer Manifesto, some weird Ouija board book. Oh, this must be Jeffrey's. I'll tell you, it got to me. And the address was like the messiest thing I've ever seen. like a Dr. Chicken scratch. And forgot my name. Luckily, I got it. I just could see their faces when they look at this book and everything. Pig, you better not start. I don't know if that's you, but What is that? Hey, it's a dog, I guess. Y'all chill. But yeah, it's a barn here. I do the show from a barn. But are you gonna read them? I want to read it. I got my problems with Whitley Strieber, but I still want to read it.
What do you read? What?
Them, his newest book. It's a new
Who?
communion with Strieber.
Oh, I haven't read his last 3 books. Honestly, I just haven't. I mean, I to me, he says the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. This is
So
supposed to be rehashing letters that he got and then breaking them down and stuff, like all the communion letters and stuff. It's called Them.
yeah, I mean, it's like I don't think he's a bad guy or anything, but it's kind of like he just says the same thing over and over again. So I lose interest after a while.
I had a pretty well-known author tell me, and this guy is not an idiot by any means. I'm not going to say his name, but he told me he was definitely a CIA asset. And he was like dead serious about it. And he's like a guy that writes pretty well-known children's books and stuff. And I don't see why. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to ask him again for the story. I also had a weird story from the, what is that? Echo from the Roman X. And not just, they're definitely a mess and into some weird pedo stuff. But look them up. He went to jail for it. But anyway, a long time ago, he told me that Whitley went to his publisher and told him it was all fake and he wasn't writing the books no more and renounced it and something. Like, I've heard all kinds of weird stories, but my Whitley story was one time I put this thing up about Richard Hoagland making fun of him saying some asteroid was a UFO. Was on Examiner or something, and Whitley said, "You've done a service for mankind" or something. I thought he was giving me a compliment, but I don't think it was a compliment because I was knocked off his page the next day, And then I wrote him anonymously, and he goes, "Anybody that associates themselves with the name Mabus must be crazy." And then he has Vaney connection, so that's always a negative for me anyway. My arch nemesis, Jeremy Vaney, who I haven't spoken to in a million years, and it's probably best for that. But I'll read that book if I get a chance. I'm just in no hurry to buy it kind of situation. I haven't read one of his books in a long time. It's been a while. I've read the original Communion and stuff like that. Like
yeah, well, so have I. I mean, I've read all of his.
The only street cred he's got to me is Christopher Walken played him in a movie. That's it. Christopher Walken, what are you going to do with that probe? I can't do his voice. Someone else could, but you ever see that movie Communion?
Yes.
I have. It's good. It's good to see Christopher Walken with aliens. You can't get any better than that. Seeing Christopher Walken with alien grays. That's always a plus. I saw some article calling Christopher Walken the reptilian actor, like a nickname. The reptilian actor. There's some movies. God, who's the director? The Witch. Have you ever seen The Witch or The Lighthouse or The Northman? Any of those ring a bell?
No. I mean, they ring bells, but I haven't seen them.
Who's that director? Roger Eggers. Yeah, Robert Eggers. They're all good. Like, they're all weird. The Witch is about, like, I don't know what the hell they are. Protestants, or they're not Amish. They're something like pilgrims or something like back in the day in the farmland. And I don't know exactly what they are. But anyway, this black goat keeps appearing to them named Black Phillip. And it's supposedly like Satan. And then a witch takes their baby and it gets crazy. Really crazy. But this movie, The Lighthouse, is black and white with Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe going insane in the lighthouse. And there's mermaid sex scenes. And it's really weird, kind of like an old silent movie. Weird. Like, it's weird. William Dafoe's farting in it all the time. And they drive each other insane in this lighthouse. It's kind of Lovecraftian. And in the light is some kind of weird, I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those you're like, I don't know what the hell just happened, but it was interesting. But the next movie he did, which is really interesting, is The Northman. And it's a Viking movie that's crazy as hell, where one of the Skarsgård brothers I forget which one, the brother to the It Clown guy, and then there's the father. They're all from Sweden. Then there's Floki from Vikings. He's one of them. It's a whole family of actors. But anyway, he plays a berserker, and it gets crazy. Like, it's good. Like, there's a lot of shamanism kind of stuff in it and crazy. The Northman, Nicole Kidman's in it or something. There's a bunch of people in it. But it's definitely worth watching. I'd watch that one again. I've seen The Lighthouse twice and The Witch twice. But here's the thing. This dude is making Nosferatu next. Redoing Nosferatu. So, I don't know if you should do that, but maybe it'll be interesting for sure. Nosferatu. And that Skarsgård It guy clown is playing the vampire in it. Lily Rose Depp. I don't know if she's related to Johnny Depp somehow. Maybe she's in it. Definitely an interesting director. I mean, he makes weird movies that do pretty good. They're definitely all weird. It's supposed to be someone about the apocalypse and some night. I forget the name of it. But yeah, I just saw The Mandalorian. It had that Lizzo singer lady in it, and then a Jack Black. They were king and queen. It's pretty good. John Favreau makes The Mandalorian. He did the Iron Man and stuff, and used to be in like comedies with Vince Vaughn and stuff. Different comedies. But as far as let's see, the schedule. Beelzebub's next week. Ronnie Pontiac's the 21st. That's like American Religion. Dude's like in some band. James Alcalone. That's the 28th. That's Shakespeare Unleashed. And what else? Monsters Unleashed. He does like horror fiction. The Night Stalker comic, he put that out. And May 5th, Barbara DeLong and Ken Godsworth. That's before Roswell. So that's what's coming up. And Beasley will be doing both hours for sure. I forget the name of his book right now. I have it here somewhere. It's about a Ouija board. It has like a smiling moon on it. A smiling moon. I see Mike Hacker's doing some more. That's his Michael Hacker, the guy that did your book, is doing another Jacques Vallée book.
Yeah. And he's done another John Keel book, which I actually got on Audible. So I'm excited to be listening to it.
Yeah, I definitely want to check those out. I'll have to get him on again and keep them coming. So have you been watching anything? I know we talked about some stuff last week. So anything interesting?
Watching, you mean?
Yeah.
I haven't actually been watching a whole lot. I've been doing a lot of reading, both regular reading, but I've also started listening to some Audible books just simply because I have to commute now, and so it helps me to sort of deal with the commute. But let's see, what if I can look at my Audible.
You know, what was the John Keel book? Oh,
it's The Eighth Tower.
Okay.
But let's see here. What have I been listening to? I've been trying to listen to things that I really enjoy. I haven't started listening to The Eighth Tower yet, but I've sort of gotten back into, maybe because the third season of Picard has come on, and I have been sort of watching it. I've decided I really don't like Picard very well. Of all the new Star Treks, I think I like Picard the least.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons.
I saw the first season. I was kind of like,
Well, the first season is the best of all of them. The second season, I was like, of course, the second season involved Q, and I hate Q. I mean,
no.
it's like I hate Q. Q is like the stupidest thing in Star Trek ever, and it's like a whole season that is predicated on a scenario that Q created. And it's like, who gives a crap about that?
Is it the same dude playing him?
Yeah. I hate Q. Anyway, so, but because of that, I've sort of gotten back into reading some specific Star Trek texts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Books.
yeah, like there's a trilogy by David Mack called Destiny, which 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 allows you to kind of it creates the continuum between the new generation and DS9 and some other stuff, including some stuff with Voyager. So it's kind of like what it does is it provides the kind of the narrative linkages between all those series. And there's a book that's called that I was able to get on Audible that is called The Autobiography of Captain Janeway, and it was supposed to be like sort of the backstory, to Captain Janeway, and it's read by Kate Mulgrew, the woman who played her. So it's pretty good. I've been listening to that. That's one of the things I've been listening on Audible. And I also found out that there's this book is only available. I could only get it on Kindle because the print copies of it, the mass market print copies of it, are selling for $600 a pop. And it's a I don't know if you're familiar with DS9, but there was a Cardassian character. Named Garrick, and he was actually a really good character on Deep Space Nine. He's like he's was a secondary character, that eventually became more important, but he was a fascinating character. He's like one of my favorite characters.
Who played him?
What was his name? Andrew Robinson played him.
Okay.
And there was this whole one of the interesting things apparently with this character was that he was introduced initially as sort of a very, very secondary occasional character. And because of the performance that Andrew Robinson was giving him, they gradually increased his importance through the process, through the course of the show. And what Andrew Robinson started doing is he started talking to some of the writers and developers, and he started writing his own story of Garrick's background and developed this character himself by writing like these notes and creating this elaborate backstory for this character. And eventually, and he did this just for himself so that, he could work on the character. And at the end of the show, when the series ended, the writers knew that he had done this, and so they encouraged him to develop it into a book, into a novel. And so it was developed into this interesting autobiography, kind of a set of memoirs by this character, and you can get it on Kindle, but you can't get it anywhere else and to be able to afford it. It's never been recorded. So I've got it on Kindle and I've been reading it, and it's great because I love Garrick. You find out all this stuff about the Cardassians and all this stuff about where he came from, his livelihood, like his background. And
sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's actually really fascinating. And it's fascinating to me when I think about when actors do things like that. Like they're given a character and they decide that they need to create it, and then they just go whole hog and create it. And it's sort of like this person that like doesn't exist just suddenly starts existing. I find acting to be amazing. How do actors do that? I don't know how they do that. It's like they become the novel. You know what I mean? It's fascinating.
And I know the Paramount, I just got hooked up to that streamer again. They're making a lot of Star Trek stuff. They're doing the Star Wars Disney route. They're going to milk it too much. Hopefully not, but they definitely seem like there's a lot of new ones coming. Different shows of like so many you can't keep up with it situation. Like I know I saw some other ones that are coming out, and I can't even remember their names. But
Yeah, well,
Star
there's
Trek shows.
well the next season. This year is the last season of Picard. They only were going to do 3 seasons to begin with. And then next year will be the last season of Discovery. And that has had its ups and downs. There are parts of that show that are really, really good. Like the characters are really good, and some of the writing and some of the ideas are really good. Some of the scenarios they get themselves into are kind of like, what? Oh, come on, you know.
Isn't that Doug Jones in it? That's like in Hellboy and stuff, and he like that weird looking alien, the weird alien. I forget. Doug Jones.
I don't know. I don't know.
I have to look it up. I think he's in it. I know he's in the Hellboy stuff. He's supposed to be doing a Nosferatu movie as well, and he's going to play Nosferatu, but I don't know if that's still happening. Yeah, he's the weird bald alien.
The weird what?
Bald alien. The weird one
Oh,
that's the main one that's like in the crew and everything. The weird dude.
the Kelpian.
Yeah,
The tall Kelpian.
yeah, that's the
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. And then there's Strange New Worlds, which has only had 1 season, but it was amazing. I mean, it was like one of the best. Most Star Treks, their first season is kind of you know, but this first season was really, really good. So, and it ends on this cliffhanger.
Which one now? Which one?
Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
And that's the one where it's the story of Captain Pike, who was the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk got, before Kirk was on the
Yeah,
Enterprise.
I need to catch up on Discovery. I saw first season of Picard, but that one looks good. That one sounds.
No, Discovery's okay. Discovery's got some. It's got some really good performances. It's got and it's got some great characters. The characters are really good. The acting, the characters and the acting are good enough that even when the story is kind of, the actors carry it. You know what I'm saying? They carry it.
Doug Jones also is in The Shape of Water. He's a reptilian.
Oh,
Did you see that with the?
I did years ago. I did.
Yeah, it won a lot of awards and stuff. But of course, Michael Shannon was in it. The mean FBI agent. He's always creepy, Michael Shannon. That guy. He was the creepy FBI guy in it, but it's good. Oh, you should see Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro.
I want to see. That is one I want to see.
That's worth it. You'd like it.
That's one I want to see.
It's just weird as heck. That's weird as hell. Definitely weird.
Well, if you actually read the Pinocchio story, it's pretty weird. It's kind of like Willy Wonka. You know what I mean? It's like when you actually read Willy Wonka, you think to yourself, does this dude really even like kids? Why is this a kid's book? And then that's kind of the way Pinocchio is too. I'm not sure that Pinocchio was for kids. I think it was for adults.
Yeah, the movie's great. I love stop animation. I'm always hunting for that stuff, trying to find it. Weird stuff like that, stop animation and stuff. I just really like it. Box Trolls, that's a good one if you ever get a chance. It's on Netflix called Box Trolls. It's stop animation. That's really good. A lot of trolls that live in boxes. But it's what they go through to do that stuff. James and the Giant Peach, you ever see that one? That's a good one.
Yes, I have.
I love that stuff. For some reason, Fantastic Mr. Fox. That's a good one by Wes Anderson. That's got George Clooney playing a fox and stop animation. You can look up a list of all that stop animation on Google, and they find that's how I usually find it. But it's good to a nice doobie and some stop animation. It's definitely good. But Pinocchio is really good. Another good one he did. Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix. He did like a Twilight Zone kind of show. That's really good. You'd like those. They're weird. There's a lot of good ones. they're just like episodic, like the anthology kind of stuff. One episode, different story, every one, like Creep Show or Tales from the Crypt. But it's called Cabinet of Curiosities. There's one where the dude, one of the guys from, I always forget his name, from Oh Brother Where Art Thou, one of the main characters, Tim Blake Nelson. He's in it, and he buys storage buildings, like in those shows where they buy the storage and get the stuff in it and stuff. But he gets one filled with like Nazi occult artifacts.
Oh yeah,
Great, crazy as hell with demons and stuff. That one's really good. I hope they do another season of that. I love those kind of Tales from the Crypt situations with the little dude that tells a story, like Creep Show and all that. The little one stories, like 1 hour stories, and every story is different. I try to collect those. I really like those. I forget what they call them, like Twilight Zone and stuff like that. That M. Night Shyamalan was going to do a Tales from the Crypt on TNT, but some reason that got canceled. I saw his recent movie, Knock at the Cabin Door. It was based on a Paul Tremblay horror book. It was really weird, but I don't know if I'd watch it again. Basically, Dave Bautista, that big wrestler dude with a weird head, and a bunch of people come to this cabin where it's a gay man and his lover, and they have a little Asian girl that they adopted. And they get there, and they basically said it's the apocalypse, and we have to sacrifice one of you. And then you have to make the choice though, and pick one of you to do it, and it'll stop the apocalypse. But what gets weird about it is for every time they say no, they have to off one of themselves. And then every time they show them, an event really happens, like planes start really falling out of the sky. It's weird. I wouldn't watch it again, but it was weird. His movies are always weird. That one was definitely weird. I haven't read the book, but maybe one year. I saw The Changeling. You ever see that old horror movie? That's a good one.
I haven't seen that one. No.
George C. Scott. It's a classic ghost story. That's pretty good.
No, I've heard about it. I just haven't had the opportunity to see it. I mean, the books I've been reading. I mean, from the blogs that I've been putting up that I've been reading through a lot of sort of older classic paranormal studies and stuff. Things that people haven't looked at for a while, and so. That's kind of what I've been doing. I mean, also what I've been reading, Star Trek and that pretty much covers it. I did actually watch a documentary about that. This documentary is going to be made available in May, I think, on Amazon Prime, both for streaming and for purchase. But it's a documentary about Lyme disease, and it's called It's called The Secret or Quiet Epidemic, and it's done by. I was given the opportunity to see a premiere viewing of it because there's an individual that I'm connected to through Stephanie on Facebook. That I don't know, just by looking at my posts, figured out that I have an interest in Lyme because I've had it, and because I know other people who've been affected by it, and this individual knows the people who did the documentary, and the people who did that documentary are trying to get funding to do a documentary on cattle mutilations. So that's I watched that movie on Lyme today, and it's all about sort of the beginnings of Lyme disease and the screw ups that the medical profession and the CDC went through, and how it's causing people to get sick and die, basically. So it's just kind of a history of it. And it's important to me, not only because I've had Lyme and know people who've had Lyme, but because a lot of it is filmed and takes place right here around where I live. Um, the One of the journalists, the investigative journalists who uncovered all this archival information about how the medical profession initially looked at Lyme and talked about Lyme before it all became politicized due to the insurance companies and money and all of that kind of stuff. Um, she's a journalist for the Poughkeepsie Journal here, just right across the river. So so a lot of the movie is happening around here because where I live is one of the epicenters of it. You know, I mean,
Yes.
like in the world of there's, I mean, Ulster County has fewer cases than Dutchess County or Westchester County, but that's only because we're more rural. You know, if you actually look at the number of cases for population, it's about the same. But because there are just fewer people in Ulster County. But um, so it's like a problem that's around me. So
Definitely creepy. One problem we've been having lately is with fleas, and it's crazy because we were using stuff like Frontline. There's this stuff called Flea Assassin, and it's like they're getting immune to this stuff. And I'm talking about Frontline. When I worked at Petco, that was the biggest stuff you could ever get for them, the most expensive and the best and whatever. And it's like they're freaking evolving or something, and it's not doing like it should. Like it's just creepy. Like I don't know. Everyone. I've heard other people around here saying too they've been having problems with it, and we're doing everything you can to keep to help protect them, and it's not enough. Like something weird is happening. Like they're getting resistant to it. Have you heard of it? Can they? I mean, have you heard of them doing that before? Or fleas?
people becoming sick from fleas?
Well, the stuff that you give to kill them, not killing them the way it should. Like they're
Oh no,
becoming.
they can get resistant to it. Absolutely. I mean, that's a problem that's happening with a lot of things. I mean, there are in different parts of the country um, there are different kinds of insects like cockroaches, for example, who have become resistant to like the standard insecticides that are used to kill them. And when when pest control people come in to like get rid of an infestation of cockroaches, they either have to use something that is so toxic that every living thing has to leave the house, when they spray, or they are we've been pushed to go back to some older remedies that kill the bugs in mechanical ways, like for example um, diatomaceous earth.
Heard people mention
Yeah,
that.
what
Yeah, I have seen
diatomaceous
that.
earth does is it clings to the hairs on the insect's legs, and it gets into their systems and it cuts them to pieces from the inside. So it's not a chemical. It takes longer to kill them, and you have to um, you have to get diatomaceous earth that you have to be careful around pets sometimes. It depends, you have to follow the instructions, but and reapply it from time to time, and it takes longer, but it will kill things just physically because it will kill them. Borax kills things too, because it will physically kill them. And so, like around here, in the city, they're being forced to use some of those old ways of killing things because a lot of the pesticides don't work anymore. So yeah, that's not uncommon because they'll get used to toxins, and they'll just get
That's,
stronger. Their immune systems will change.
it's definitely been crappy. Have you ever heard of nematodes? What is
Yeah,
that, like a worm you put in your yard? That's what they said they eat
I
them.
think a nematode is a worm. Yes,
They said someone told me they would eat them.
they might. Yeah.
But I'm going to get more diatomaceous earth. We've already been putting some around, but I may just do the whole yard of it. put it everywhere, but definitely it's doing a little bit better. But we use this stuff called Flea Assassin, fleaassassin.com, and it usually kills the crap out of them. They just take like a capsule and peanut butter or something like that. And that's been usually doing it. But lately it's been like, is this even working? What the heck? A lot of it's they'll go outside and they'll jump on them right when they're coming back in. It's a problem from outside. So if you can get to that and nuke the site, maybe that'll stop their reign of terror. For sure. Definitely don't like it. I was wondering if they have ghost fleas, because I swear you'll see one in the house or whatever, and then you get paranoid, start itching and stuff and freaking out from them. I hate them. Nuke them all.
Well,
Nuke it.
well, I get when I see a tick, or I feel like I might have a tick on me.
Oh,
I guess because the sort of headline. I get what I call tick head, where I start itching everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like every little itch I have, it's like, oh my god, it's a tick, you know. And I start like scratching and looking at myself and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's
oh god. I've seen those big ones on dogs before, where they get not our dogs, but like a stray or
like
something.
grapes. They get like grapes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, those aren't the ones you have to worry about. The ones that you have to worry about are the larvae, because the larvae are really, really tiny. You know, they're like when they're around here, when you know most of the tick-borne diseases around here, not all of them, but most of the tick-borne diseases, there are like 8 tick-borne diseases right now that you can get here in New York, but like most of them are spread by one tick that it's called the black-legged tick. And when they're in their larval stage and they're engorged, like fully engorged with blood, they are only the size of a poppy seed. That's how tiny they are. And so people don't see them. And it's when they're in their larval stage that most people get the disease, because to get the diseases passed to them, because they don't, because with Lyme, the tick has to be attached to you for at least 12 hours. It has to really be burrowed into you and attached to you for at least 12 hours before it actually passes the germs or the bacteria onto you. So that if you're careful and you look and you find them, you can get them off of you, and you won't get it. But because they're so tiny, people don't see them. They don't feel them. They don't look for them. And that's when they get them. When they're big like that, then you can actually feel them biting you. Like I've been awakened in my sleep from one biting me, a big one.
Oof.
And then you can just pull them right off. You know, it's like, nope. You know, but it's when they're in their larval stage, and when they're in their nymph stage, which is when they come out, when they hatch or whatever, they can't transfer anything to you, because they have to pick up the Lyme or the diseases from a reservoir, like a mouse or something. So if it's a nymph and you find it, you can tell if it's a nymph by, you can look at it under a microscope or a magnifying glass, and if it has 6 legs, not 8 legs, but 6 legs, then it's a nymph. And even if it's bitten you, you're okay, because you're the first thing it's ever bitten. So it can't, in other words, they're not born with the disease. They have to pick the diseases up.
Who makes these things? Like Satan or something.
Well, there's evidence here. This is the other book that I've been reading.
Interesting.
It's called The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons.
Wouldn't surprise me. That's why I was worried about the fleas that are being put here by far foreign enemies with the plague in them.
Yeah, you're going to get the plague. You're going to get the plague.
A weird story I saw recently about Mike Myers, the guy that plays Austin Powers and all that.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Apparently, if these stories are true, and unfortunately it seems like it may be true, but he seems crazy as hell. Like one of his what is not bounty hunters, bodyguards, said that he got fired for looking at him, and he has a rule that you're not allowed to look at him, and if you look at him, you get fired. And then this other lady that seemed nice from a movie came forward and said that he was horrible to work with and always late. And then they were saying how he like has a one dude on that Saturday Night Live that gives him chocolate, and that's his whole job is to have a box and to give him a chocolate. Just like weird, eccentric, creepy stuff that has came forward about him working with him. Apparently he's like a diva, like a little too much weird. But I've always liked his movies and thought they were funny. I know he just did some weird show on Netflix. I didn't get to watch it. I forget what it's called, but I forget what it's called. Mike Myers I know it didn't do very well review wise. New Netflix show. It's like weird. It's the Pinta Verate. It's weird. I haven't seen it, but somehow it's tied to his movie So I Married an Axe Murderer, which I don't know exactly how, but it's definitely just a creepy story. You can't look at him. That's kind of weird. Hopefully that's a lie, but maybe not. I don't know. But some other nice lady from the show said he was weird stuff too about him. That was weird. Oh well, everybody's weird in their own way, but hopefully he's not that weird. You can't. Don't look at me, or you're fired. But I've read some comic books. What did I read? Creep Show. You ever see those Creep Show movies?
I have. It's been a while, but yeah.
Meteor S with Stephen King and the plants and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's one that's roaches. Oh my god, that one's hard to watch. The roaches start coming out like crazy.
Yeah, I have to admit, Alan has done a lot to help me respect certain types of insects, but I still have a thing about roaches. I do not want them in the house.
Yeah.
I do not want them in the house. I can deal with spiders in the house. I can deal with centipedes in the house. I can deal with weird, what are they called? Stink bugs in the house, and ladybugs in the house, or what are called true bugs in the house. I cannot deal with cockroaches in the house. I hate them. I just hate them. I don't know. Maybe I just have this conviction that on some level cockroaches have a group mind, and their whole idea is to invade my life or something. But I've had to live with roaches. I've had to live in apartments that were so infested with roaches that in the morning I'd sit up and I'd have my coffee and I'd put my coffee down and I'd go to reach for my coffee and there'd be a roach on my cup looking at me.
Ugh.
I just can't deal with it. It's like, get the fuck off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said the F word.
It's okay. Joe said on here that it's not as bad, so hopefully it's okay. On Roku. They have Amazon and stuff.
You can yell at me. You can yell at me if you need.
They have Amazon and stuff on there, so Amazon. Okay. But I know Amazon got rid of the Conan show because they said toxic masculinity. It moved to Netflix. The Conan.
Toxic. It's a Conan. Conan has toxic.
Conan, the TV series. They were making it on Amazon, but they got rid of it. Netflix.
What is toxic masculinity?
I don't know. I don't know. The Conan.
I know what it might be on a Tinder profile, but that's. I don't know what it would be in a movie.
I don't. Conan. Raping chicks, probably. I don't know. That's what. And some of those scenes in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies are like that. I don't know. Toxic masculinity. Hell if I know. It's just too much masculinity and Conan at the same time. Too much. I like splatter westerns. There's a new book genre called splatter westerns.
What does that mean?
It's like a western that's crazy, kind of like Weird West, I guess, but a lot of maybe gore, I don't know, but that's what it's called, splatter western. If you look it up on Amazon, a bunch of weird books will come up. It's a new genre. I know there's splatter punk, so maybe it's kind of like that, but Western, which I'm not sure exactly what splatter punk would be considered. Uh, but splatter Western, I have a few of them. I need to get the rest one here. It's hard to keep up with books so much lately. To buy them anyway. But someone named Chad Lutz on my Facebook, How the Skin Sheds, a splatter Western. And if I'm right, it's the same company that just puts out splatter westerns, which is pretty cool. But just weird western stories with werewolves or something, weird stuff. Maybe they're a little bit more gory. It says right here, when Garrett Walkinshaw pays a visit to his sister, he finds her murdered, throat sliced, and nips missing. But they use nipples. Oh, my goodness. His albino niece left emotionally scarred on her bed, determined on getting revenge. The two set out after the killer, following a bloody trail of skin-lacking bodies. After Garrett's best friend, a recently freed slave, joins the road trip hunt, they're forced to teach Garrett's niece the dark world of survival and assassination in the gritty Wild West, where they meet with a myriad of roadblocks in the form of evil lawmen, bizarro brothers, a swamp witch, and more. Happen Leonard meets Leon, the professional, chasing down Ed Gein. So they're pretty weird, but they're westerns. I like it. Weird West. But a long time ago, I ordered some Whitley Strieber weird comics from some company. It's just 2 comics that are just stories. It has gray aliens on the cover, and they got lost around December, and they vanished. And even the dude I bought them from eBay, they were like $8 or something. But he went to the post office to try to find them, and this was in New York, and I forget what city, but they couldn't find them. Well, lo and behold, they just arrived this week. Like, these comics just vanished into limbo for like 4 months or something, and then finally got to me. Like, it was weird. It's just weirder that they're weird gray aliens on the cover. Like, it has pretty cool artwork on the cover. I haven't read them yet. They're black and white. Whitley Strieber crap. But I guess they're like little stories or whatever. But it's just weird. Like, where does mail go for 4 months and vanish? Like, somebody accidentally drop it and lose it in their car or something. It was just kind of a weird story where they just popped up finally, and I got them after 4 months of limbo for these weird comic books. I have no idea where they went. But I don't know. I need to read more. It's kind of hard lately for some reason. I don't know. I've read some Creepshow comics. And it's kind of funny because in those movies, there's a comic floating around. And that's where all the stories come from. But they put out some new stories and comics that are pretty creepy. One of them's like this Barney creature, like, goes to a kid's birthday party, and he's like one of those dressed up whatever, like Barney or something, but he goes crazy and starts eating them all. That was pretty good. Oh, there was one movie I saw, Benny Loves You, and it was one of the weird ones just on Hulu that I saw. I was like, what is this? It's about like a stuffed animal, kind of like a sock puppet, comes alive and starts killing all this guy's enemies. And it's funny and weird. It's called Benny Loves You. And it was one of those you watch that's better than expected. But it's British. It's on Hulu, but it's funny. It's gory, but it's weird because it's this funny, like, smiling stuffed animal that's doing it, and he's like, Benny loves you while he's killing you and smiling. But it was a good one. There's a really weird one I saw that stop animation called Mad God. That was weirdness. Figure known as the assassin descends from the heavens into a nightmarish world. It's by a guy named Phil Tippett. I think it's on Shudder. But weirdest stop animation I've ever seen in my life. Just weird. Like, this guy made it, like, I don't know, like, spent his whole life making this movie. Maybe 20 or 30 years. Phil Tippett. He did special effects in Star Wars and Jurassic Park somehow. But definitely bizarro. I didn't even know what the hell was going on. It was just one of those weird ones, like you feel like you're in hell and seeing weird stuff. like just crazy. I can't even explain it. It's so weird, but it's worth the watch for sure. Well, everybody, you're listening to churchofmabusradio.com. That's United Public Radio. It's UFO Paranormal on here. 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm in Florida. Wham's in Hudson Valley. David Nicholas is in Pennsylvania. Next week's Beelzebub, Interview with the Devil. Some reason his mom calls him Beelzebub since he was a child. He used to be a co-host here. It'll be interesting for sure. So
it'll be great to talk to him. It's been a long time.
Yeah, we always keep it weird. Always follow your weird. Keep on moshing with the apocalypse. And if you go to churchofmabusradio.com, we've been having tons of tech trouble. That's Church of Mabus radio.com. There's a message there. You can figure out how to help out. And hopefully the site will be re-resurrected soon by Gregory Miller. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. And I'll actually hopefully be shaved. Today I'm usually more clean cut than this. So if I look like I got hit by a cow, it's because the pig escaped. And I was looking for it all day and then did the show. And we found the pig, Elvira, named after the Mistress of the Dark. So she's here. Gosh, the pain in the arse for sure. But we love her. All right. Thanks, Wham. Thanks, JoJo. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Good night, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Care. All right. Take care, everybody. Good night.